Well, a lot of folks are wondering, what will this winter hold? We've kind of started off in some areas with a slow snow December, and it doesn't look like there's much snow in the forecast for many areas that might have already seen their first snow. However, it's been pretty cold and snowy across the Northeast. In this video, we're going to look at what's going on around the country right now, what I think we're going to see in the days ahead, and we are really going to dig into what's going on further to our south and west here as we start to see somewhat of a La Nina develop. Is that going to play into our weather? We're looking at the North Pacific, this really strong Pacific jet. And I think that is going to continue to really mess with our weather over the next couple of weeks into January, maybe even beyond. Hey, if it's your first time on the channel, welcome. I'm Travis. I used to be a chief meteorologist on television years ago. I've been out of that business for years, and I found myself looking at these types of things, tracking weather, looking at models, figuring out why it still gets warm and cold, and maybe what does the long-term forecast hold. So if you're into that, hope you'll come back. Hope you'll subscribe. And let's just get right into it. Here's where we are right now. We've seen this active storm pattern across the West Coast. I think that's really going to continue at least for the next couple of weeks. Let's dig into some changes that we're starting to see, though. It's not quite a La Nina yet, and that's when you get those colder waters here in the eastern Pacific, and it's all about the thunderstorm activity that develops into Indonesia. And we're starting to see that too. This is where we were last year. These water temperatures were much warmer than average across the eastern Pacific. As we move to today, look at this. We're starting to see cooler than average water temperatures here because you're starting to pick your winds up out of the east and northeast here. What that does is start to lift that water up below the surface. It's called upwelling. So you're taking that warm water, you're pushing it west, and it's being replaced by colder water right here off the coast of South America. And that's continuing to develop. You can really see that being enhanced here. Some strong winds come off of Mexico, creating some well below average temperatures as that upwelling is enhanced. It's not really what's causing the colder than average temperatures across this broad area, but the idea, though, of those trade winds picking up as a result of those thunderstorms that continue to build across the West Pacific. And here's the reason why. This is kind of a different look. This is from NOAA. Here's North America, South America. Across the West Pacific, you get a lot of rising motion with those thunderstorms, and that air has to be replaced. So you develop those easterly winds. That's what causes that water to upwell. And that matters because last year we had that warm water here. And as you get those cold air masses moving south, you develop a very tight temperature gradient and therefore a strong subtropical jet. That's why it's usually wetter across Southern California during El Nino year, across the South, the Southwest. We had more rain and snow, especially at the start of winter than we've seen this year. Right now, we're seeing the opposite. You see that cooler water. We've not been as cold across the west with a bit of a ridge, so now your temperature difference is very small. So you don't see much of a jet stream here. That temperature difference is what drives that westerly jet. The opposite is happening across the North Pacific. You've got some warm water here. It's way above average, and it has been really cold up here into Alaska. I've been talking about this now for the last couple of months. We've seen more ice up here across the Arctic Ocean compared to last year, and with that difference, I mean, think about it. We're above average here temperature-wise. The water's above average, so the air above it is warm. We're colder than average up here, and now you've got this screaming Pacific jet that's just moving through the North Pacific over and over and over, and it's just pounding into the West Coast. Now, just for reference, I know it's hard to see. I'm drawing the West Coast of the U.S. Up here is Alaska, over here is Russia, and right in here is Japan. Look at this jet stream that just continues to really just roar across the Pacific. I mean, you've got winds here in the upper atmosphere moving over 150 knots at times. And again, it's being caused by that cold air to the north, the warmer air to the south, and also really across the Pacific. And it's just pounding those storms into the Pacific Northwest over and over and over. And I think that continues as we head into the end of the month. And it's going to also change the overall climate across North America for the next couple of weeks into the 1st of January. Now, what does that look like for the lower 48? Well, here's what I think is going to happen. As we get toward Christmas, I think our temperatures drop below average, and then look what happens beyond that. We go way above average here across the Northwest Territories, way up into northern Canada as we get that Pacific air mass moving in. And you can see that here on the models as we move through this week. Temperatures fairly moderate, but we start to see a trough dig in the east, and then here comes the northwest flow. Temperatures will be on the way down. We've got this huge low pressure here off the coast. Remember that strong jet I showed you? That's going to bring in a lot of rain. The atmospheric river slams into the west coast, and then it's going to start to push some moisture into Canada, where it's really cold right now. These are temperatures in Fahrenheit. Check it out. We are well below zero up in this area. teens and 20s, some cases even close to 30 below zero. But look how that changes as we move around, say, the 21st, the 22nd. You can see that cold air getting displaced and spilling down into the United States. But look up in here. I mean, this is well above average. I know it looks like you're just being blistered here when you look at the temperatures, but you're talking close to 30 degrees above average across northern parts of Canada. So what does that look like? Single digits, 20s. You're not getting above freezing here. It's still cold, but you're definitely seeing the influence of this Pacific air mass. This is a great way to look at it too. This is your water vapor, or really your precipitable water. This gray, that indicates some really dry air. Arctic air is dry, cold, it doesn't hold very much moisture. And look how our Pacific air mass starts to invade. At first, parts of Western Canada, and then look how it pushes into the Arctic, right? It pushes up into Alaska. So now it's mixing with this colder Arctic air, and it's modifying things. So now we're warming up the Arctic a little bit. It's not warm, really, relative to what we feel here in the lower 48, but pretty warm and above average. Now, how does that impact us across the states? Does that mean we won't see a snowstorm every now and then? Does that mean we are not going to get cold? I don't think it does, and I don't think it means we stay warm either forever. In fact, if you look at some of the long-range European weeklies, it has a bit of a ridge starting to develop across Alaska. I will tell you, I do believe this. I think we're going to go warm and then we turn cold towards the 1st of January with a strong northwest flow. But now, again, you're still going to have that strong Pacific jet because I showed you that warmer water here. We've got a bit of a La Nina developing, and I don't think that's going to get your subtropical jet going here. That also might limit some of your southern snowstorms. I'm not saying we're not going to get anything that could surprise us. We might get something that sneaks in here and that could combine with some energy dropping out of the northwest, and boom, you got an East Coast snowstorm. We'll have to see. And this trough may even be further to the west, and now you've got more Midwest snowstorms. I'm going to take a wait and see approach on this, but that's what the long-term European weeklies are showing. And then I think they start to shift your trough back further to the west as we head into January. Some of the MJO forecasting, that's the Madden-Julian oscillation. I am not going to get into all of that, but the phase shows it going colder as we head into January. At least that's what I think. All right, here's the short term as we head through the rest of the week. We do have multiple chances of some light snow moving in with these northwest flow clippers that will be moving through. Again, what you don't see, a big East Coast snowstorm. You don't see a big Central Plains blizzard. As far as snow totals go over the next couple of days, that system might bring some snow across parts of North Dakota, Minnesota, a couple of inches out of that. But overall, again, no big snowstorms. Now, this is some decent snow that could get dropped over the next couple of days. That's the light snow that will move through the region by Thursday morning, and then another system moves through that will bring some more light snow on top of that. So by the time it's all said and done, you could be looking at a couple of inches toward Milwaukee, up to Green Bay, back to, well, I don't know if into Madison, but really north of that, and then back into central Minnesota. Some of that weakens as it heads east, but still some snow here and maybe even some light accumulations down into the Appalachians and across the west. It's going to be active here, especially across the Pacific Northwest. Not necessarily for California for a good chunk of the week. I'm going to back that up. We've got the rain and the snow going through early Tuesday, but then that shifts north as we head into Wednesday. Some rain and snow into parts of Oregon, but the brunt of moisture really heading north into British Columbia, and we're dry across the Four Corners states from Phoenix, Salt Lake City, Denver, north into Wyoming, Idaho. A bit of a break here. We've not really seen much precipitation across the far southwest. And then our next storm really starts to impact the Pacific Northwest sometime Saturday into Sunday, and then we start to get active again heading into next week. All right, that's all I got. Hope this was helpful. If it was, hope you'll hit like, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you next time.